What you do when you literally rob someone of their life through political violence is you make them a martyr.
Yes.
So when I hear people like Destiny whining about that, well, what do you think? Like, what did you think was going to happen?
I'm telling you guys that you actually probably assassinated the last good faith person who wanted to hear out both sides.
I don't think we actually need that next person. What I think we need is actually the people of the United States to have the courage to come and say, well, fix it yourself. Look in the mirror and say, how do I fix my own life instead of relying on someone else to do it?
I love that message. Be the change you want to see in the world,
Exactly.
right?
Don Jr. said something extremely interesting to Megyn Kelly the other day. He said, you know, we tried talking. We tried doing the nice thing, but they killed the guy who did that. But I'm just so frankly alarmed by people like Jasmine Crockett. She insinuated that Charlie was adhering to principles of Hitler.
Because everyone said that this whole thing was reminiscent of a Nazi rally. It sounds like Jasmine Crockett was one of the few autistic people who actually believe that on face value.
Let me just say, I don't think highly enough of Jasmine Crockett to think that she has autism, because I know a lot of geniuses. I know a lot of geniuses who are autistic.
Yeah, I don't really like using that.
No, what I mean is, like, these politicians are completely owned, lock, stock, and barrel, by donors. I'm gonna use it, they are puppet masters, and the politicians are the puppets.
Welcome to Her Take. I'm Anna Kasparian, and we have an awesome show ahead for you all today. First, we're going to talk about who will take up the mantle for Charlie Kirk following his tragic assassination. Who has the willingness and ability to engage in the type of dialogue and debates that he was willing to engage in? We're going to have a conversation about that. We're also going to talk about an impending government shutdown. Considering there's ongoing gridlock in Congress, it's very likely that we are facing down a government shutdown. What does that mean? And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates and the ongoing battle between President Donald Trump and Fed Governor Lisa Cook. But before we get to all of that, I just want to introduce our guest for today, Will Witt, two-time best-selling author, former PragerU chief social media officer. Former PragerU. I don't know what you did at PragerU.
Like personality, I guess.
Personality,
Yeah.
okay. We're going to get a little taste of that personality on the show today. And the chief social media officer at New College of Florida. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
All right, so I figured we can kind of open up this conversation today with just like a free-flowing conversation about who we see fit to kind of take up the mantle for Turning Point USA. Obviously, Turning Point USA is a conservative organization, so it would need to be a conservative person.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start with you, Amy. What do you think?
Sure. So I don't want to go definitively into who I believe it will be, because honestly, there is nobody who could take the place of what Charlie did. The way he was able to reach the youth has truly been unprecedented in any political organization that we have seen. However, one point that I wanted to make for this segment is just how the underlying intention behind taking out Charlie Kirk just completely renders the intention behind that is rendered utterly useless when you consider the fact that anybody, honestly, who's going to come in and fill the void. Because whenever there is some type of a vacuum, people are going to come in and they're going to fill it. And most of the people who are either qualified, willing, or capable to do that are more extreme than Charlie.
That's actually...
They're more extreme, and this is why I want to bring this up, because I don't know who's going to take his place, but the point that I want to bring up is just how utterly redundant, idiotic, stupid you leftists were to think that you could do this and actually stop our movement. Obviously, we know that in the interim, Erica Kirk has been named CEO of Turning Point. She is now in charge of that platform. And Connor, if we could please play this clip that I sent to you, I think that this is going to send a big message and really highlight the point that I'm making here.
Wife joins us, Erica Kirk,
Hi,
the beautiful,
everyone.
legendary Erica.
I love you so much.
I love you.
You're my best friend.
Welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show. We have asked the audience for questions. You pick one.
Who is more conservative and why?
Erica,
Yes.
by far. Not even close. I am a moderate. compared to
I am a
Erica.
moderate.
Andrew always jokes that once you got married to me, you got more based.
That's true. That is true.
And
No,
he
Erica
was.
is very conservative. Do you think having kids made you more
Charlie
conservative?
Kirk was a moderate, and this is the point that many of the leftists are missing in this. They think that he is some homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, like every single phobia that you could possibly attach to the end of the word, they have designated to Charlie Kirk. But I'm telling you guys that you actually probably assassinated the last good faith person who was actually interested in debate like that, who wanted to hear out both sides. And now this vacuum that you have created needs to be filled. There is a void that needs to be filled, and I'm telling you that most of the people who are either willing or capable or qualified to take it are more extreme in their positions than what Charlie Kirk was.
I agree with you in that there are definitely people who are further to the right than Charlie Kirk was. Look, Charlie Kirk did say some things that were taken out of context, but he also said things that I didn't agree with that were in full context, right? So, like, I'm not going to completely, like, forget about those things. However, when you compare him to other, right-wing voices, I think it's fair to say that comparatively speaking, he was
a moderate.
But more importantly, he was, instead of like allowing the country to kind of descend into political violence, he wanted to open up avenues in which two different sides or competing sides, opponents get together and they actually hash it out through dialogue.
Right.
And to me, that's a really important thing to continue with Turning Point, right? Like if it turns into the type of organization that engages in the same division and demonization that has torn this country apart, I really don't think it would be doing Charlie Kirk's vision any justice. Now, I'm not a conservative, so it's hard for me to say who should take up that mantle. But Will, you've been very, much involved in conservative organizations. You used to be at PragerU. What are your thoughts on it?
I honestly don't think, first of all, you can't fill Charlie's shoes. There's no one who's going to be able to do that, not just because of what Charlie did and spoke about, just because Charlie had a very unique way about him that you were just talking about that I don't think a lot of other people want to do. I think engaging in good faith is something that both the right and left both don't want to do. What I would hope for, the way that I look at it, because people have even come and said, Will, why don't you be like this next person? But for me, it's more like, I don't think we actually need that next person. What I think we need is actually the people of the United States to have the courage to come and say, not just trying to be on the thing like, we are all Charlie Kirk, we're all Charlie Kirk. But it's like, if you believe in those values and you believe in the way that he did things, instead of looking for one guy to lead you and fix things, if you really believe in it, go fix it yourself. Look in the mirror and say, how do I fix my own life instead of relying on someone else to do it for me?
I love that message. Like, be the change you want to see in the world, right? I mean, people say that, but do you really mean it? And I think that by taking control of your own behavior, engaging in self-accountability, and really valuing dialogue as opposed to divisiveness, you're setting an example and potentially inspiring others to do the same. What do you think, Lindy?
Thank you. I love this. I love Amy's point, what you said earlier about how he was kind of moderate by comparison. Don Jr. said something extremely interesting to Megyn Kelly the other day. He said, we tried talking. We tried doing the nice thing, but they killed the guy who did that. They killed the guy who tried to debate. And to your point, Anna, a lot of the potential substitutes are far to his right, and we can name them. Ben Shapiro is champing at the bit to replace Charlie Kirk.
Can we actually go to that video of Ben Shapiro? So this got a lot of negative attention. I don't think Ben Shapiro meant what people think he meant, but let's play the video and I'll say what I'm talking about or say what I mean.
I will be coming to college campuses, many of them this year. So will we all, I am sure, because we're Americans and we're not going to be deterred. Charlie's voice is not silent. We're going to pick up that bloodstained microphone where Charlie left it. And to those who would intimidate, who would seek to stop us, who would seek to end free discussion, who believe that they have ownership over public spaces and can violently threaten and kill people who speak freely, we are not going to stop. And I have two words: fuck you.
Ooh.
So people saw that as Ben Shapiro announcing that he's going to be the replacement for Charlie Kirk. I didn't see it that way. I think he was trying to send a message that, conservatives are not going to be deterred.
We're not going to be afraid.
They're not going to be afraid. And I think that's a good message. You shouldn't be afraid because of political
I agree,
That's
because there was a bunch of people who were actually, in fact, Myron Gaines had a campus tour scheduled here in Florida the next day. He canceled it as a result of that. But, you know, fair enough. And a bunch of people did. And I think what's important is the message that, yes, we're going to be safe. We are going to be measured. We're going to make sure we have security. We understand the danger that can come at us, but irregardless, we will not stop. The issue that I think most people had is the fact that Ben is Jewish, and Charlie's thing he said that he wanted to be remembered for is the fact that in bravery, in the worst of times, he was going to be brave and he was going to proclaim the name of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
That's what he wanted to be remembered for.
Yes, that's an incredibly important point because at heart, it's a Christian organization that a lot of people want to keep it that way. I do want to mention it wasn't just this clip that people were upset about. It was the fact that he said he was going to go on a campus tour. He announced that shortly thereafter. And then he announced a huge donation, even though the Daily Wire is basically disintegrating. With all due respect, it's just an objective observation.
Well, they've been laying people off because of financial issues.
Exactly. They're having severe financial difficulties. I do want to say, I think we should keep an eye out on Benny Johnson. I think he fits the profile. If Charlie is irreplaceable, but Benny Johnson seems to be the most like him in terms of faith, in terms of...
Isn't he Jewish?
No, he's Christian.
No, he's not?
Deeply Christian. Deeply Christian. And he has a massive MAGA following.
The problem with all these kinds of people that we're talking about and looking at anyone is that the majority of these conservative influencers and just influencers in general know a lot more about marketing than they do about actually standing up for what they believe in.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
And so I think most people, maybe not everyone, because still lots of people get thousands of views and likes and everything, but a lot of people can see through it. Charlie, I've known Charlie for a long time, and even if you disagreed with him, I can genuinely, vehemently say that he was the real deal. He really believed in what he was saying.
He was authentic, for sure.
You know?
Yes.
He did really believe in it, and so I can't say that that's true for a lot of other conservatives. And I'm very conservative myself.
But politics is not just about the message, it's about how you talk about it. For example, Biden may have done a good thing or two, but his messaging was just such a dereliction of duty because he wasn't able to communicate that, yes, he got infrastructure funding. Yes, he was able to get investment projects and bridges and roads. He wasn't able to tell the American people because he was in decline. He couldn't communicate that. Another thing that I want to say is I was actually struck by what Patrick Bet-David, what PBD was saying about who's going to replace Charlie. He had this very discussion, and the consensus that he came to was essentially nobody. No one can.
Nobody can.
Exactly.
I couldn't name one person who is able to reach the youth on the same level that Charlie did. Like, I can't think of anyone who's as relatable. And the fact that he was a moderate, and this is where the left really screwed up. Again, they eliminated the last part.
I gotta stop you because I can't. It's not the left. It's either the one shooter who's now detained, and maybe an accomplice. We don't know yet. But like, I'm on the left, right? I'm not a leftist, but I'm on the left, and I.
So do you disagree that the majority of your of political violence has come from the left? I know the YouGov poll came out, but that was the statistics were skewed.
Look, 25% of the left, according to that one poll, think that political violence is okay. I find that disgusting. I disagree with it wholeheartedly. And I don't think most Democratic voters or most people who consider themselves on the left were under any impression that by taking Charlie Kirk out, it was going to somehow improve politics in this country or help the left win anything. In fact, what you do when you literally rob someone of their life through political violence is you make them a martyr.
Yes.
So when I hear people like Destiny whining about that, well, what do you think? Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Don't you think that there's a bunch of people of that opinion that think the same way? People on the left who aren't intelligent, who aren't smart, who aren't thinking that far ahead.
Well, they're being influenced by content creators that I just think, to your point,
are more... Kasparian some credit here. I have to mention this. Her performance on Pierce Morgan.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I have
seriously,
to mention that
yes,
for those
thank
who didn't watch. And Anna just admitted that I'm not on the left. I'm a conservative. I'm actually so relieved I can be an out loud and proud conservative. But Anna is, you've embraced your identity as kind of like a populist, I would say,
yes,
right?
definitely.
You care about the American people, and the way that you went after Destiny, who has a reflexive attitude towards politics, he allows his own hatred to dictate where he 100%. Comes down on policies. And you called him out on that.
Yeah, because
and I highly encourage everyone to watch it.
Because what he's preaching, because look, he does have a huge audience, and they're young men, and they look up to him, and I think that he is leading them on a destructive path because it's all about basing your politics on opposing the other side,
Orange
regardless
Panda.
of what the other side believes or what they want to accomplish or whatever. I think you should take it on a case-by-case basis. I'll give you specific examples. What I appreciated about Charlie Kirk, even though I had vehement disagreements with him, is the fact that through our dialogue, we found common ground. We found common ground when it came to regulating private equity, so they stopped buying up residential real estate. We had common ground on policies like paid family leave. Like, I wouldn't know that we have those commonalities unless we engage in that dialogue. So to me, what's important is that the spirit of Charlie Kirk continue, regardless of who the new, face of Turning Point USA might be. It matters that that person basically move away from the divisiveness and the promotions of political violence that I'm seeing.
Propaganda at the end of the day. Move away from propaganda. Let's talk about truth.
Exactly. And to celebrate having these conversations and these debates. That's what I want. But I mean, again, I'm on the left, so I'm sure conservatives watching are like, who cares what Anna wants?
No,
But,
Anna. I disagree because, again, going back, I think that the main thing, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the main thing that has really hit me about this, if we're going to take anything positive, because let's try to extract something positive from tragedy. It's the fact that people who have forever disagreed about things, whether it be Catholics versus Christians, moderate versus extreme right wing, we're all coming together and we're saying, no, this is about good versus evil now.
Yeah, I
There
agree.
are people who are on the left, we want to reach out to you guys. We want to all work together because evidently, at this point, we're really talking about good versus evil, guys. There are people who are celebrating murder and political violence because they believe it achieves some specific end. They believe it makes some point. And then there are people who object to that. Guys, it's never been more painfully obvious which side we need to align with. And so I'm telling you, if that means aligning with your local leftist, not even leftist, your local liberal, or progressive, because they don't stand behind that. If that means aligning with a person who is agnostic or maybe even atheist, but they oppose this. Guys, this is the time where we need to band together.
Exactly. For me, it's
More than
about
ever.
whether or not you have love for this country. If you love this country and you want to see the people of this country thrive, then you have to reject political violence. It's that simple. Violence, in my opinion, is the act of cowards who can't articulate persuasive arguments.
Absolutely. I think it's the ultimate capitulation. You can't win on the argument, so you have to pull out a gun. And I just want to say I find it completely reprehensible that Democrats weren't able or chose not to vote for that resolution in honor of Charlie Kirk when Republicans voted for Melissa Hortman, who was gunned down. Her husband and they were gunned down brutally in Minnesota a couple
After
weeks ago.
voting in favor with Republicans.
Yes.
And that's what happened. She voted in favor
and
with
not
them.
only were Democrats opposed to the resolution, they made speeches on the House floor defaming Charlie as
and
a
refusing
Nazi,
a moment
as
of
a
silence
fascist.
as well, when it was first approached by Biden, wasn't it?
And they were shouting the Republicans down.
Yes.
That is so incredibly inappropriate.
I know.
And
It was an
such a
opportunity to turn the temperature down,
They
and
chose
they
not
didn't
to.
do it. And I know that they think that it's all about being principled, but I personally didn't see it that way.
It's the opposite of principality. That is the opposite of principality, in my opinion.
He's gone. Like, he's dead. We all know that if you're a Democratic congressperson, you disagreed with his politics. We don't need a reminder of that. But this was a political assassination, and the country right now, I think, is kind of hanging on by a thread. Things can get a lot worse. Contagions happen.
Yes.
And a contagion of political violence is likely unless we have the types of leaders who are willing to condemn it, bring the temperature down, and find a way to unite the country.
Yes.
That's a difficult thing to do, and it takes someone who's selfless to do that.
There's only one person on the Democratic side I can think of right now, and that's John Fetterman, who actually, I mean, he had the guts to post that tweet prior to the memorial. He's like, you know, let's give people time to grieve. Like,
that was the only one. That was the only one that I saw, at least on the left, who even gave any type of grace. And that wasn't even I'm sorry for your loss or anything.
Bernie Sanders had a really great video.
Okay, yeah, I retract my statement. You're right. Bernie Sanders.
There were a
Sanders
few.
isn't even part of the establishment. Like, he's out there doing his own thing.
Current
That's true.
establishment,
That's
correct.
true.
Yes, current establishment, I haven't seen anybody.
Will, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, I was going to say, one thing I think we're not totally taking into account is the fact that the people, I don't know if the normal American people are ready for actually taking in the truth. I think a lot of people, when it comes to this political stuff, I mean, all the people on the left, someone like Destiny, or the people on the right who are just making nonsense political stuff, I mean, people just want to be told what to think all the time.
I don't think that's true. I think
totally
that
think
people
that's
have been
true.
conditioned to feel that way. But I think most Americans feel so disillusioned with politics, and they don't like the fighting. They don't like the fact that there's constantly gridlock in Congress. They see that their quality of life has been diminished year after year. It doesn't matter what administration is in charge. I think that a lot of Americans have just checked out entirely. And to be honest, I don't blame them. They've given up hope.
No,
Well,
I have. But I think what I'm saying is, like, people, instead of wanting to go and be that individual person who says, I'm going to fight for truth and I'm going to stand up and be a next Charlie Kirk or something like that, they'd rather be a part of some political group, even if it's not Republican or Democrat,
Right.
but just like a part of some group, because it makes them feel better about themselves than actually being a part of something, than having to be the brave
Also,
person
it's
to stand
easier
up.
because, I mean, their day-to-day concerns, frankly, aren't politics. It may just be putting food on the table and putting their kid through school. So I actually understand what you're saying. But I'm just so, frankly, alarmed by people like Jasmine Crockett, who just yesterday she called, she insinuated that Charlie was adhering to principles or ideas of Hitler. She used that word. She said Hitler on CNN. She said, I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to apologize for anything. The host gave her an opportunity. Dana Bash gave her an opportunity to revise what she said. And she said, no, I'm not going to back down. Like Hitler it is.
Again, because she's probably one of these autistic people on X who see a post quoting Erica Kirk trying to be facetious, saying, oh yeah, this is what Hitler said, because everyone said that this whole thing was reminiscent of a Nazi rally. And when she gave her remarks and she said, I forgive that man, people on X started posting, I forgive him, Adolf Hitler. It sounds like Jasmine Crockett was one of the few autistic people who actually believed that on face value, rather than realizing it was a meme.
Yes, I agree with that sentiment, but let me just say, I don't think highly enough of Jasmine Crockett to think that she has autism, because I know a lot of geniuses. I know a lot of geniuses who are autistic.
Yeah, I don't really like using that.
No, what I mean is, like, she doesn't deserve
taking
that.
things literally.
Yeah,
because
I
this is a
understand what
thing
you're
that
saying.
autistic people do. My roommate is autistic. My little brother is autistic. They take things very literally when you put them out there. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
She's being a horrible person.
And I was being facetious in that moment, referring to her.
No,
but
what I
it's
mean
like,
is she's just a terrible, terrible person who is profiting off of this. She's sending out, and I'm on these fundraising lists. I'm actually curious to say what they're saying.
Well, that's part of the problem, right? Like that the like people are more likely to donate to an individual who's engaging in the divisive rhetoric. And unfortunately, I think that the Democratic Party, not all members of the Democratic Party, but certainly some of the more prominent ones that we've been hearing from in the media, they have mistaken this moment as one in which engaging in like performative, like divisiveness is like somehow being passed off as like governing or leading the country.
Absolutely.
It's not.
Like AOC's
I mean,
speech.
AOC's speech on the House floor in regard to that resolution involving Charlie Kirk
terrible.
was, I probably wouldn't go in that direction, right? And I don't think it's helping the situation at all.
No.
But I'm just really thirsty for leaders who are going to try to bring the country together because there's a lot on the line right now. That's all I'm going to say.
Anna, you need to run for office because that person's just not going to come along. And as you say, be the change that you believe in.
I don't think you should run for office.
I don't want to run for office. No.
You're too good at talking.
But I'm just saying, like, you are so much better. I think anyone of it, like this show, everyone here cares so much more about this country than I think the 435 social media influencers we have.
That's the issue, and that's why
show.
people are saying to Anna that she needs to run for office.
Okay, no, we're not going to adjudicate this running for office.
No, not you. Okay, not even you though, but the people who are in there. Do they want?
They don't give a shit about us. They don't. They care about they're held hostage, honestly, by the quarterly fundraising. Fundraising by the donors.
And you know what?
Putting up the money. They have to raise about
Before we move on, I feel like we need to touch on this because this was your world, right? Before you became more conservatively aligned with the values that we're talking about here.
I was conservative, but I hid myself.
But you were a donor and you were a fundraiser for the Democratic Party. Can you please, just before we move on, talk about that and how beholden they are to that.
To the money.
How you felt.
Actually, Politico on June 29th, 2024 ran a really interesting article about Biden's train wreck of a debate. They said the only people who have the power to pull the plug on his campaign, other than Jill Biden, are the people in that room. And by that, they meant the National Finance Committee that I was sitting on. These politicians are completely owned, lock, stock, and barrel by donors. And that's also, I want to tie it back to the discussions that we've had earlier. That's also why our foreign policy is held hostage. It's because our donors control that.
Yep.
I'm going to use it. They are puppet masters, and the politicians are the puppets.
Yeah, but let me just say this with you.
Thank
When you're
you.
talking about divisiveness, I think divisiveness actually a lot of the time is a very good thing. I mean, I was living in LA for 5 years. Everyone there hated me. You know, not everyone, but a lot of people. And so now I live in Florida, which is a completely
You got
different
that Hollywood
place.
hair. How could they hate you?
Yeah.
I know that. Well, I disguised myself at the bar
Your
really
hair is
well until
nice.
they met me, you know? But it's like, I wanted to get away from that kind of stuff. I wanted to be divided from that because it's just as totally as antithetical to what I think America's about and what a lot of goodness values are. And for me, I think that division is good. I'd rather be
You do,
divided
like-
from things that I...
That are
you
terrible.
sure? I live
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, and I can tell the people at the restaurants, they like hate me. Like when I get my food, they have this really like angry look on their face.
Wait, why?
Because I'm conservative.
How do they know you're conservative?
How do they know?
Just because they know you
Because
as a
I'm in-
public figure.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
But there used to be a time, I know I'm not like hallucinating, I'm not imagining this. There literally was a time in America where you can hate the position someone has politically, but you don't hate the person.
That's over.
Right.
And we've moved away from
no,
that.
we have
Yeah,
to.
that's
come
definitely
on.
true.
So that's what I'm referring to when I say divisiveness, right? Like, I'm not referring to, oh, there's tension between two groups who have two different beliefs or values. It's more about the dehumanizing impact that we've seen in our politics, in our country, in like, you know, the last, 15, 20 years?
Well, it goes
I
along
think
as
you know
people
what's
make
been
the
driving
politics
that?
their
There's-
moral framework. If it makes it their reason for living, instead of saying, oh, I'm conservative and I also box and rock climb and like I have a job, my family, it's like, this
It's
is my
their
entire,
religion.
this is
Woke is
why
their
I live.
religion. And one last thing I got to say, this,
Sure.
it's something that you and I touched on specifically in past episode. It's the income inequality that drives
Yes.
the political polarization. And that's why, that's the interesting time frame that you just brought up a few seconds ago, the 10 to 15 years, because it's gotten progressively worse in the wake of the Great Recession.
Yes. You're so right.
Billionaires are getting so much richer, and the working class, I mean, they're just ailing right now.
And when people are struggling financially, they're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for someone to blame, and that allows for dishonest actors in our politics to pit Americans against one another.
Yes.
So be aware of that. And, you know, I'm going to keep fighting to bring people together, even if, you know, people hate it, even if I get backlash for it, because I think that's the only way forward. But why don't we move on to the divisiveness that we're seeing in Congress? Because it turns out that we are in for yet another government shutdown. There is ongoing gridlock in Congress. And Lindy, you've got all the details. Share them with us.
Absolutely. Actually, when we first discussed this topic, I thought things would, you know, resolve itself quickly. But unfortunately, things have escalated. Connor, can we show the? Yes, exactly. So I just wanted to describe what's going on here. Democrats have chosen to essentially vote for a shutdown. Why? Because Republicans proposed a clean, continuing resolution which basically maintains spending. I want to be very clear what this means in the grand scheme of things. Spending skyrocketed during the pandemic years. We were spending like drunken sailors, spending money that we definitely did not have, running up the bill. We have about $33 trillion of debt. We just passed the big beautiful bill, which is $3.4 trillion of additional debt, money that we do not have, money that is mortgaged on our future that we have to pay for. And so Democrats want to up the spending. They want to make sure that we extend health care to illegal aliens, that we do all sorts of things. Republicans are advocating for fiscal responsibility. And on this issue, I completely align with the GOP. And so that's what's at stake here. And the deadline is October 1st. If we do not get a deal by then, government services will shut down. And we have several clips that I do want to play. But the quirk in this is that Republicans don't really care so much about shutting down the government because that's the whole idea for them, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So
Which is why
exactly.
it kind of puts Democrats in a disadvantage when it comes to using government funding as like using it as leverage, essentially. It doesn't work as well when Democrats try to do it because they see more value in these government institutions running and being funded appropriately or adequately.
Democrats believe in government, conservatives, big government conservatives don't. So let's be clear before we play this video, what are the services that stop if and when a government shutdown occurs? I believe it's a national park shutdown, right? What else happens
it's
if a government
triage,
shuts down?
so it's like a gradation. Like as time goes by, more and more services get shut down. But yes, it would start with auxiliary services like that. You know, not life-dependent services.
Right.
But can we please play actually the Mike Johnson clip on illegal? It starts at 1:20.
Federal politicians and members of Congress still get paid, though, even if there's a government
exactly.
shutdown.
Yeah, I was
That's
about
what
to say,
my
you said the
understanding.
Republicans don't
Yes.
care. Well, yeah, because they still get
Even
paid.
if
They still get
They
paid.
still get paid.
Preemptively, well, sorry, not preemptively, after the fact.
Yes,
They
yeah.
get, so
They still
even
get
if
paid.
certain pays stop for a certain period of time, there is back pays once everything kicks back in. Yeah.
Yes. This is the Speaker of the House.
$4 trillion in new spending? The answer is, heck no, we're not doing that. And we're not going to pay for health care for illegal aliens. That's against the law. We're not doing that. They're not being reasonable at all. A short-term...
Yeah, Chuck Schumer has been adamant on this point. He keeps talking about the health care for he uses undocumented immigrants. We cannot afford to pay for health care for
Illegals.
We just can't. I'm sorry. That's just something that I cannot abide. We have millions of Americans who are homeless, who are suffering. We should be taking care of them first.
Including veterans.
There's nothing bigoted about wanting to care for Americans first. We have so many homeless encampments around the country.
Is that really the sticking point?
That is one of the major sticking points, that Chuck Schumer wants to expand healthcare coverage.
So I just want to understand, because I literally don't know.
I think that's a dumb political point to make, too, because it's easy to argue against.
One of the other things that I'm curious about is, when it comes to the government funding bill, because of the cost of borrowing, they have to up the amount every time they vote on the legislation. Is that one of the other arguments Democrats are making, or is it something different?
It's basically the health care, and also Chuck Schumer is like, I'm not going to cave on this because in the previous bill I caved. That's another thing. He's saying, you give me something in return this time, because Chuck Schumer didn't really get much of substance on this. So right now,
He's such a terrible leader.
He's such a terrible leader. Yeah. Also, can we play the clip of Trump in the Oval Office, please, Connor? At 3:20. So, this is him calling Democrats bluff.
We'll continue to talk to the Democrats, but I think he could very well end up with a closed country for a period of time, and we'll take care of the military, we'll take care of Social Security, we'll take care of the things that we have to take care of. A lot of the things that Democrats fight for, which in many cases aren't very good things, will not be able to be paid. So we'll watch and see how they do with that. They'll have to handle their constituents pretty carefully.
Yeah, that's great.
We're proud
so
to
the bottom line is they don't really have much leverage. The Democrats, you just don't, because their threat is basically, it's like, don't threaten me with a good time. Republicans want the government.
I just can't stand this dysfunction. I'm going to be honest, and I've talked about this on the show before. I am worried about our debt. And I didn't think the big, beautiful bill was a responsible bill to pass, considering that it adds trillions of dollars to our debt. You know, we're spending $1 trillion a year servicing our debt right now. That's part of the reason why Donald Trump is like so adamant about the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates. But the Fed has begun lowering interest rates in an inflationary period, you know? So I'm worried about what this means for our economy. I'm worried about stagflation. We're going to talk about that a little later. I'm worried about all of it. But what are your thoughts, Will, about the possibility of the government shutting down? Do you think it's catastrophic?
I wish it would last longer, you know, honestly. But all this stuff is performative show. I mean, these people coming on and doing this, they're playing around with people's lives, people's jobs, their livelihoods, their families. And it's like, just so they can go on CNN and talk about it. And they go and they argue in Congress, and they're all out to dinner together with the same lobbyists. And it's like,
it's the uniparty theater.
Yeah, you guys
That's
don't
what
give
I
a
see
shit
this
about
as.
any of us.
This is something that people might not know, but for the conservatives, and I am such a fiscal conservative, like the hardcore, and I'm with you so much on the debt. Like, I want to hug you. I agree with you so much. I do want to say, though, on the Republicans wanting to shut down the government, I think a lot of them don't realize it actually costs us more to shut it down.
Yes.
You have to pay everyone back.
Yes.
And then you pay people overtime. You know, it actually ups the bill than had we not shut down in the first place.
I can't stand this.
It's just, and I hope people realize that our economy is in a very tenuous position. We have been, for lack of a better word, hemorrhaging jobs. And job growth has been pretty anemic.
Yep.
In the last month, it was, in June actually, it was negative 13,000. They had to revise it down. So we have to be very careful, especially with interfering with the Federal Reserve Board. And I want to extend President Trump some grace, but I do want to point out that in the 1970s, Richard Nixon did the same exact thing. And that's why the 1970s, we saw those gas lines, the people waiting for hours trying to get some gas because of stagflation and everything. It's because when government officials interfere with the direction of interest rates, cataclysmic economic conditions ensue. It's always like that. We saw this in Turkey. We saw this in Europe. We saw this in Argentina. It's around. It's the same story over and over
They
again.
all have central banks, and this is what it does. The Federal Reserve is just a central bank that prints money for whenever it wants it.
Okay, I totally agree. I mean, the Federal Reserve, I mean, look, on one hand, I will admit that the Federal Reserve at this current moment is in a really tough spot because high interest rates is crushing the country because of how much debt we have. And it makes borrowing a lot more expensive for businesses and individuals who might want to get a mortgage or a car loan. But this has been a problem on steroids since the economic collapse in 2008, when the Federal Reserve engaged in quantitative easing, which I'm sure you know a lot about, Lindy. And it's just cheap, easy money, and it's creating asset bubbles. It's distorting.
That's why they set up the Federal Reserve in the first place, because they knew they could do the quantitative easing and keep getting their own money and getting rich off the interest, and the normal people just suffer all the time because of
that's
it.
what's unfortunate is at the end of the day, like, just understanding, pure and simple, capitalism is great. I'm a big proponent of capitalism, but unfortunately what it comes down to for most of these people is that how can I make money?
This is crony
How can I make a
capitalism.
buck?
The Federal Reserve is
it's
not capitalism.
Yeah, it's distorting the market.
Yeah.
It's manipulating the market, right?
crony capitalism.
Yeah, totally.
And not to mention, it's also against the law. The 1914 Federal Reserve Act it specifically guarantees the independence of the Federal Reserve Board. No one should be interfering with that. And also, you know, investors are seeing it as well. You know, I'm actually almost bracing myself for a stock market correction because the price of gold has been skyrocketing. And you know when that happens? It's because when investors realize that something's not right.
Yes.
So they put their money in hard
intangible assets.
Exactly.
In case
as
everything
opposed to-
goes to shit, that they have
and
some
also,
type of
there's
physical
another
reserve.
Thing. I want to be very clear that I'm viscerally opposed to communism. And what is communism? It is the government takeover of private enterprise. All right? So I'm a little bit concerned. That's an understatement. I'm concerned when the government takes a stake in
Intel?
In Intel, for example, a 10% stake in Intel, when they strike up arrangements with NVIDIA to take some of their profits, when they broker a deal with U.S. Steel, one of the premier flagship American companies.
Palantir.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, let me ask you something. I think this is such an interesting conversation because, you know, with the legislation that was passed under Biden, he wanted to ensure that we were manufacturing the semiconductor chips here in the United States. And I agree with that mission.
Absolutely should.
It is very important to do that because if we're reliant on Taiwan, consider the fact that China wants to invade Taiwan. I mean, that's a whole different foreign policy question. But it kind of puts us in a vulnerable position because those semiconductor chips are incredibly important. Now, under Biden's legislation, us taxpayers would essentially give grants, like our money would go to private industry to encourage them to manufacture chips here. I actually like what Trump did, because what Trump did is he's like, no, there's no giving money to you. We're investing in you.
Right.
And we deserve a share of the pie as part of our investment. You don't think that's worth it?
But that's not, I actually love that. If that were the case, then let's do that. Let's be an investor. Let's demand an ROI, return on investment.
Right.
That's not what he's demanding. He's demanding a seat at the table, a board seat.
No, they denied that.
It's not a voting. You're talking about he's not getting voting shares, but he has a board seat.
Okay, but
Government should not be overseeing private enterprise. They should not have a seat at the table being part of decision making is what I'm saying.
But if they don't have voting rights in this context.
But if they're on the board though, like what do you think is going to happen? They're just going to sit there and look pretty, you know? Like
I mean, you need someone to represent the taxpayer, right? If we're going to
But if you're
But
just
you have to
gonna,
have an opinion.
But what I
Like,
mean is if you have a seat at the table, then they're just going to sit there and not I'm not naive enough to think that they're just going to sit there and keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
I'm actually assuming that they're going to express, you know, what the president's wishes are. I just don't think it's appropriate for private enterprise to be taking government. You know, I just don't think they should be taking direction.
So if you believe in actual free market capitalism, that means no help at all, right?
Well, what I mean is like taking an investment. What the big three in Michigan did, Detroit, after the Great Recession, we funneled billions of dollars into GM, into Ford, and they paid us back.
They did. They
Not
paid
only
us
did
back.
they pay us back, they gave us a return. We made money on that. So it wasn't a bailout. We should be doing things like that.
I thought that was what this Intel deal was. It's a little different.
Exactly. The government is more involved. Like
Interesting, okay.
And Trump is allowed to put his stamp on that. So that's what concerns me a little bit. We shouldn't be doing any government takeovers. Investment is a different story. We should be doing that. We should be support, because you better believe China's doing that. They're pouring money into their industries.
They are. That's
exactly.
right.
But I just don't think that government officials should be sitting on any sort of leadership panel or whatever.
Okay, that's fair. I actually agree with you on that. Yeah.
And this is a continuing conversation that we've been having, is like there's certain things that you can encourage or discourage in the general marketplace of ideas versus mandating legally and being able to have a definitive say at the end of the day. And if we can start to be in a little bit of lockstep so far as who is the real enemy, aka people who want to commit political violence, people who want our governments to be owned by foreign agents, okay? We should all be universally recognizing these are the enemies here.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a partisan
basically
thing.
owned by corporate agents already.
I know. And that's the biggest problem in this country right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have FedEx going and spending, what, $10 million lobbying the government for tax cuts, and then they get $1.6 billion off of tax cuts in 2018.
Boom. Yes.
It's like, that's on both sides, everything happening. Like, these people just don't care about you at all.
And that's why I agree with you when you say, you know, when it comes to the government shutdown and like the debates about it in Congress, it's all political theater, always, right? It's all to give you this illusion that the uniparty isn't a uniparty, that there's two options here. In reality, a lot of them actually are in cahoots.
It's just
TMZ. A lot of
TMZ.
them are funded by the same corporate donors, the same foreign donors.
Also, Anna, to your question, I also want to bring up another danger of models like this. It gives leaders an opportunity to force corporate leaders to go hat in hand to the White House saying, like, what do you need to do? I'm going to bend over backwards to make you happy. And that's essentially what happened with the Intel CEO. Someone accused him of being a spy, having ties with the Chinese Communist Party. So he went hat in hand to the White House saying basically, like, I'll do whatever you want.
Interesting.
Like, save this company.
I will say one other thing. I believe 2022 was the last time this happened, but Intel, instead of investing in their own company, decided to take their profits and do corporate stock buybacks and artificially inflate the value of their shares. There needs to be some regulation against that, okay? Because if you're failing your own company, you shouldn't have to rely on a bailout or the government coming in to help you out.
Amen. Effing men. Because you know what other company did that? Boeing, and then we ended up with defunct planes. Boeing was notorious for doing that, and now we can't even have, you know, planes that don't have bolts flying out of them in the middle of a flight.
So before we wrap up the show, we've got one more topic. I know we've kind of touched on it already, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates and what this could possibly mean for our economy moving forward, because I am, in fact, worried about this. So the Federal Reserve recently announced that they are cutting interest rates. In fact, they just cut interest rates by 25 basis points, and Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, announced that they're intending to cut interest rates 2 more times, one more time in October, another time in December. Now, this should be music to Donald Trump's ears. I'm sure he's very happy about this. But remember, when the Federal Reserve increases interest rates, it's basically meant to tackle inflation. And we have been dealing with an ongoing inflationary period in this country. Unfortunately, President Trump has not managed to get inflation down to 2%. In fact, the latest data indicates that our inflation is at 2.9%. So that's still high. And if you lower interest rates, that's going to heat up the market even more, heat up the economy even more. So it could increase inflation while at the same time we are also experiencing an anemic jobs market, right? The latest jobs reports, several in a row now, have shown that we're losing jobs. Employers aren't hiring as much as they were before. The official unemployment rate is still low, relatively speaking. It's at 4.5%. But if you know, have this situation where companies aren't hiring, and inflation is still sticky, and on top of that, you're heating up the market with, interest rate cuts. Well, we are headed for, many economists believe, stagflation. So, Lindy, I feel like you articulate this way better than I do. What is stagflation?
Stagflation is when you have high unemployment and inflation at the same time. We saw that happen in the 1970s when Tricky Dick got involved in the interest rate setting. He pressured the board to lower interest rates in order to win re-election. And yes, for a time, for a few months, things were rosy, but things ultimately crashed. And the chickens always come home to roost. It always happens that way. And another thing I do want to mention is that we have been talking about lowering interest rates for so long that the market already baked it in.
Yeah.
So the impact of it is actually softer than we had initially wanted.
What do you mean by that? For the unadept, the uneducated, can you explain a little further?
A lot of the economy and a lot of the stock market is basically sentiment. It's how people feel.
Right.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think the economy is going to go well, it's probably going to go well. It's kind of like a Ponzi scheme of emotion.
I mean, this is what people have said about crypto for the longest time. It's basically equivocating into what
belief.
you just stated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people have been seeing this, like Polymarket. Polymarket has actually become a reliable market indicator. They use that as an empirical metric. Polymarket and other firms have, and Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, they've put out these statements saying that lower interest rates are coming. So people know that. And so interest rates have already been falling already. So it is now cheaper to get a mortgage already, even prior to the interest rate cut. So the impact of that cut is not as significant. What we do need to, and I know you're going to touch on this, is a Lisa Cook seat. That is going to be pivotal, because after Lisa Cook, if she goes, Trump will have 4 seats on the Federal Reserve Board, and 4 seats is what you need to control all of these seats around the country, because we have chapters around the country.
That's right. So part of the problem with the Trump administration is that he doesn't really believe in the independence of the Federal Reserve, and it's supposed to be independent for a reason.
Right.
Now, when you think about politicians, they're going to want to do things that are favorable to their political careers as opposed to what's necessarily good for the country or good for the economy long term. So since Trump is trying to kind of control the Fed, he's getting or attempting to get rid of one of the Federal Reserve governors. Her name is Lisa Cook. He's tried to fire her without cause, and I mean that because there was this claim that Lisa Cook had engaged in mortgage fraud. Well, now there's evidence that she actually hasn't. What she was being accused of was basically that she was using a vacation property as her primary residence. When you do that, you get certain tax breaks and certain, favorable things for your finances when you do that. And so he was accusing her of committing fraud. There have now been multiple reports indicating, the one you're looking at right now is a headline from Reuters, exclusive, no evidence of primary residence violation by Fed Governor Lisa Cook, says Michigan officials. So they've actually looked at her mortgages. They've looked at what she has claimed. She's been clear of fraud. And so it's, to me, very clear that she hasn't done anything wrong and Trump just wanted to get rid of her. She's fighting back. And recently the appeals courts said that Trump didn't have the right to fire her. However, he wants to take this case all the way to the Supreme Court. It remains to be seen whether the Supreme Court is going to take this case up. But I firmly believe that Trump is in the wrong when it comes to this issue. I am curious what you guys think.
I mean, listen, I wanted to be really positive when it came to this administration. And honestly, don't even take my word of anything, because I'm new to this game. I honestly am. So I have not been aware, one would even call me naive, to believing in political promises that were told. I'm going to be honest. Most of the things that Trump came in and said that he was going to do outside of the area of immigration, I'm tremendously impressed with the leaps and bounds we've been able to make in that area. The only criticism really is that it hasn't been enough people, right?
I agree.
I think that we have made progress in that area, but Anna, I'm not surprised. Honestly, I've been disappointed by most of these things.
I think what's pretty bad is that you can look at the economy and you can look at it from GDP and you can say, wow, America's doing just absolutely insane. But then you look at it from the level of like, well, how have wages stayed like exactly like this since the 1980s? Well, everything else has gone up, inflation, college prices, everything.
But you have to adjust for inflation. It's actually going down. I mean, because you know what I mean?
Wages go down because of
inflation. Power of the dollar.
Yeah, but like stuff like college and houses are going way up. Like even if the wages are
executive
like, and
pay.
that's,
like
totally.
that's the inequality that Lindy was alluding to earlier in the show, and I think that is the heart of so many of our problems in this country.
Yes,
because it's pitting Americans against each other. When you're desperate, you're working hard, but you're unable to put food on the table or pay your rent or pay your mortgage. If you're a hardworking person who went to college, did all the right things, you got a degree that, will get you a well-paying job, you're making good money, but you're still unable to afford a home. Think about the kind of rage that has instilled in like the hearts and minds of Americans. So I don't begrudge the anger that people are
as
feeling.
well.
Yeah.
At this point, it's the majority of people, no? I feel like so many people have gone through this system and come out the other end to realize it was a scam. It was a lie. Now, obviously, I want my doctor and my lawyer to have gone to college.
Right.
But for the majority of people who feel like they are better than thou because they received some type of higher education, when really you received an indoctrination. For the most part. The majority, and I know you may be in different opinions on this, but for the most part, I personally would not want my kids to go to college.
Well, I wouldn't want my kids to take out all that debt.
Because of the indoctrination that are...
I'm more worried about the finances, right? Like, look, I wish we lived in the type of economic environment where people who have intellectual curiosity can go to college and, like, learn. We don't live in that environment anymore, right? So now you have to see college as an investment, and it is not an investment that pays off anymore. Even if you get your college degree in something that leads to a well-paying job. A well-paying job isn't enough anymore.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
People say it's like, oh, it's just because you went to school for lesbian basket weaving studies. It's like that's the debate that Destiny brought up with me when I fought with him over the validity of college.
But
he was like, people just go for the wrong degrees.
But it's not that
just
anymore.
That.
It's not Amy, that is spot on, because you know what? Even if you got an engineering degree, in the past year, your degree has been rendered obsolete by AI.
It's so sad.
It's so sad. You know, these people who thought their futures were guaranteed, their jobs are the first to go because AI is excellent in writing code. And I think, Anna, to your point, I think it's extremely important that we talk about the accuser of Lisa Cook.
Yes, let's bring it back to her.
Bill, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Pult? P-U-L-T-E?
Oh, Pultz, yeah.
Pult. His family was accused of doing the same thing. Let's be very clear.
Mortgage fraud?
Same thing. So, this is NPR reporting this. NPR is not known to be a right-wing publication, to say the least. I just find that incredibly ironic that happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I just think it's unfair to accuse someone of something they haven't done just to justify their unfair firing because you want to have control over the Federal Reserve. Again, I think there's a lot of value in keeping the Federal Reserve independent. And I would say the exact same thing if it were Biden trying to do this. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. Politicians have their own narcissistic self-interests, and it's all wrapped around, their own political careers and the perception that the American people have of them. Trump wants lower interest rates because it's going to be cheaper to borrow. He thinks it's going to make him more popular with the American people. But is that the best path forward for our economy long term? And based on what I'm reading, that's not the case.
Well, it kind of goes back to the whole Supreme Court thing, too, where you're stacking the court and having people who agree with you or anything like that. But then it comes down to a matter of values. Like, you could say, oh, you're stacking the court. But for me, when I see someone like if you had all 9 Clarence Thomas in there, I'd be like, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be like, that's okay. Because I would feel like they represented the law and American values better than somebody else.
Actually, I'm with you on the conservative stuff, but can we pick a different conservative? Maybe I don't know.
You don't like Clarence
I like the idea of having a mixed court where all people are represented
owned by
in the
Paul
country.
Singer and Harlan Crow. That Clarence Thomas. Okay. I hate to say this, but I would even prefer Brett Kavanaugh over Clarence Thomas because I would at least know he was his own man. We know now that Clarence Thomas is not his own man. This is somebody who received hundreds of thousands of dollars in free vacations from a billionaire real estate magnate.
It always goes back to
more
the
just
same
using
thing.
it as like an example.
It always goes back to
Like,
corruption. And we have to root that out. If we don't root that out, then we're never going to have a government that looks out for Americans. We're going to have a government that looks out for the wealthy, for corporate interests. And that's why I believe things have been getting worse. And that's why I believe honestly, our economy is really distorted right now. You know,
But Anna, how do we fix that when it's the fox guarding the hen house?
Well, I can tell you exactly how to fix
begin?
it, but I don't think there's going to be any willpower behind it. It's getting rid of Citizens United. Because that's where the power, that's how the corruption came
Preach.
in. Thanks, Anna. Because that's where the floodgates are. Money has been pouring in since 2011, and that is supercharged income inequality because we don't know who's funding the dark money behind the TV ads.
True.
And the TV ads basically determine which candidate wins the election. I'm sorry to say that.
I mean, not all the time, but I mean, the boomers are still a large part of the population. And yes, Reagan, one of the things that he did some good things, he did a lot of bad things. One of the bad things is that donors did not need to explicitly state who they were or why they were donating or anything like that.
The dark money.
And this has become a very big issue now with dark money culture in our society, what we're seeing. And there are no repercussions because of a decision that Reagan made however many years ago, right?
Well, also
So
in
it's-
2011, the Supreme Court basically said that corporations are people. That was their ruling. So if they are people, then they have speech.
Yeah.
For me, I think the only way any of this gets solved is if the American people demand it. But the American people are never going to be effective if we are divided and hate each other. On the issues that matter the most, I actually see a lot of common ground and a lot of agreement. Both
So
the
true.
left and the right hate the corruption. They want the money out of politics. Can we work together?
Yes,
Can we
I
put
heard-
our other policy differences aside and build the broad coalitions necessary to demand change,
Well,
to
they
demand
can't.
you root out the corporate, the corruption.
Corruption. Well, they can't build it because constantly we're always choosing the lesser of two evils. Instead of saying no to either option, we say, well, I'm just going to vote Republican because it aligns a lot more than
Because
the
it's a
Democrats.
binary choice.
Yeah, but it shouldn't have to be like that. It should be if everyone abstained, which will never happen. But let's say everyone abstained, and then we were able to make a real change for people who actually cared about us. Then you can make it happen. But people continually choose one of the options instead of saying, no, I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
But I feel like things like this, the last couple of weeks, the last month, it has woken us up to the fact, and I've already been waking up to this, me even, who was vehemently conservative. It's a uniparty, guys. I mean, it's
On a lot of the
one end of the
important
same
issues.
coin on like literally 5 out of 10 issues. On, I would say at least 50% of the issues, at least, and I'm being conservative, because I'm always conservative when I try to give some statistics, I really feel like it's 50-50 on this stuff. I feel like it's 50-50, both ends of the same coin, and people are starting to realize that. And when you realize that, and you realize that you are truly voiceless in these situations.
On a lot of things, when you really think about it. I mean, okay, let's put corruption aside for a second. Let's talk about government censorship. We know that was going on under Biden, right?
Yeah,
and now it's
absolutely.
going on under the Trump administration, you know, with Pam Bondi saying that she wants to do something about hate speech, which is unconstitutional.
And Charlie, by the way, said that we shouldn't. That was opposed to his
that there's no
wishes, by
such
the
thing
way.
as hate speech.
Yes.
Hate speech is actually protected under our Constitution.
Yes. Ugly speech, evil speech, gross speech. He said these words. There are these things, but none of them constitute as hate speech because we live in a free and fair society where we can speak whatever we want. And in the marketplace of ideas, you will be judged by that.
Yeah.
Not legally. There's a huge, huge difference.
I
And it
wanna
really
give-
But I think
sickens
we're
me.
missing the cultural point here because when you're talking about these things that we agree on, maybe we agree on 80% of things, but there's a 20% cultural thing
Yeah,
that
and for
we just
example,
won't, you know, maybe we do. I don't know.
immigration.
But like,
I think immigration
not
is a
even
big one.
immigration, the
I think that's a big
transgender,
one.
the
You think that's
race
what it
stuff don't-
is?
I
oh
think
my goodness.
immigration.
That is what's
immigration
stopping
is what's.
I think those
I just-
issues, I think like the transgender issue, for instance, was intentionally used as a wedge issue.
Yes.
And it got everyone fighting each other. In the meantime, you have both parties handing out cookies and goodies to like corporate interests that fund their campaigns. Doesn't matter
I'm
if
not
you're on the
saying-
left
yeah.
or the right, right? Are we going to keep taking the bait?
No, we should not be beholden to identity politics. We need to realize what these people are doing to us from both sides, even our side sometimes.
Well, identity
they're
pol-
trying to
No,
goad
both
us.
sides definitely do
Yes,
it.
but even they're out. What I'm saying is for you on the left, they're
Yeah.
using that against you. For us on the right, they're using that against us. They realize the power of identity politics and they are goading us into positions based on that because they realize the power of it. Plus, now they have influences. Plus, now they have donors. Plus, now they have all of these things that can make people so much more beholden to the ideology that they want to espouse. Like,
Amy, I agree with your theory that I mean, it's indisputable. You're right, and there's no way to debunk what you just said. I do want to say that there's on one important issue the parties are not aligned, and that's immigration. They're absolutely not aligned on that.
Completely.
But I do want to give you one example. I have a specific example to buttress what you just said. Jeff Yass is the wealthiest person in Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a billionaire, and he's one of the earliest investors in TikTok. Initially, Trump was opposed to TikTok. He just said it was like a bad idea. And Jeff Yass was able to change his mind on that. And so I'm just going to say that when I was a Democrat, I worked with his team.
This person who's about to take over TikTok?
No, Jeff Yass, one of the early investors. I worked with Jeff Yass's team to defeat a socialist candidate in Philadelphia. I'm giving you a specific example of the uniparty at work because we saw the socialist candidate as a bigger threat, and there's no way a Republican could win in the city of Philadelphia. But it's basically a uniparty at work, at the municipal level, at every single level. You're absolutely right about that.
You just got to follow the money. It's that simple. And when you see how many of these donors fund members of both sides of the political aisle, that money's not free. That money comes with strings
Can we
attached.
talk about AIPAC? AIPAC is notorious. We can finally talk about AIPAC. Oh my God. Anyway, enough said. I'm not going to go into detail, but yeah, like AIPAC is they're I'm going to give them credit. They're political masterminds. They know how to work both
Very
sides.
strategic, very effective.
And when they run ads, they don't say anything about Israel. They talk about bread and butter issues. If it's a Democrat, they will attack them on Democratic issues. If they're a Republican, they're going to say they're not conservative enough. They're wise. They're wise enough to understand that Israel's not at the top of American people's consciousness. They care more about economic issues.
Oh, they
so
care
they
more
run
about
on, they
Islam
run on
or
that.
whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Do you remember the name of the individual, the billionaire, the Jewish billionaire who is poised to earn TikTok right now? I forget his name.
Larry Ellison.
That's
is
it.
Exactly.
That's it.
Larry
No.
Ellison.
So
there's another Jewish
their
one.
whole thing.
Wait, there's another one. Andreessen Horowitz.
So their whole thing is they poise it to be like, we don't want foreign interests owning this app.
Right. We don't want foreign influence.
Because this will then influence future voters. This will influence our populace. We don't want their algorithm to get into the heads of our people, right? But we can sell it to somebody who is vehemently pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, pro-Jewish. That's fine. By all accounts. And I get it.
Not fine.
Judeo-Christian values are more closely aligned.
But wait,
sure,
this is not Judeo-Christian. Hold on a second.
But
Mass slaughter is not Judeo-Christian. I'm Christian. I actually don't know where I took a shower and I took my necklace off, but I've been wearing the same cross necklace for 20 years. I'm a proud Christian.
I know you
are.
My
faith is everything.
I know it is.
I know, but mass slaughter is not Judeo-Christian.
No.
It's not.
No, it's not.
And so, actually, I thought of you when I saw this. Amy, I think of you all the time.
I think of you all the time.
I just want to say, someone said that cracking down on TikTok, was that their way to suppress information from Gaza coming out?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
100%.
The person who's doing content moderation there now is a former IDF soldier.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 100%. This was a story that I talked about on the Young Turks like several weeks ago. Look, do you guys know what happened in Nepal recently?
Yes, the government overthrow with gender.
I bring that up as an example because the former government of Nepal tried to quell the protests by banning social media. And it didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think that this attempt to silence people or censor people who are critical of what's happening in Gaza is not going to bode well for those who want to protect Israel.
Facts.
Because those protesters in Nepal, they managed to overthrow the government. Banning the social media didn't work. And it goes back to what we started this episode of the show on, Charlie Kirk and the importance of dialogue and debate. When you run away from dialogue, when you run away from debate, when you think you can win by silencing people, you're not going to win.
Facts.
Okay? And in fact, something far more dangerous arises from censorship, from shutting people down and refusing to engage in dialogue. And so people see what's happening in Gaza and they're against it. It's not because they hate Jewish people. It's not because they're anti-Semitic. It's because they're able to look inside and acknowledge their own humanity. If you're a human being and you see innocent people getting killed on a mass basis, on a regular basis, you find that wrong, and that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person. And trying to silence people who feel that way, that's just going to lead to a certain level of rage that I don't think is helpful or healthy for the country.
Yes.
And I want to give credit to two people. Number one, to Charlie Kirk. He was inching his way ever closer to the position that you just expressed. And number two, I want to give credit to you again. This is so important because I made a mistake earlier this year. I was facing just terrible backlash for my switch, and I was looking for a home. You know, it was very hard for me. It was like existential. It was the hardest period of my life. But I had been a critic of Netanyahu for years past.
Yeah.
And I stopped because I wanted, I wanted a home. And Anna, and Amy, you've said this before, your repeated, consistent calling out of mass slaughter, even in the face of withering, backlash and criticism, has been nothing short of inspirational. It's so hard.
I appreciate
and
that.
The fact that they're coming after your family is
I
so
know.
wrong. But it inspired me, and I don't think Amy and me would be where we are today had it not been for you.
Oh no,
Do you agree with that?
100%. Anna, you have. I remember the first day we started this show.
I remember it
I
too.
said, what did I say to you? I
The
was like,
first thing Amy said when she saw me was like, "Oh, you and I are gonna go at it." Like that was the first thing you said.
I was like, I like you, but we're gonna go at it. I
Yeah.
was like, I gave her a compliment, but that also delivered that message. And I will say that again, what I've realized in this whole thing, this whole debate this year, is that there are people who are left, right, and center who can agree on some unified, humane principles.
Yes.
Right? And that is what I have found in Anna. And you are one person who has genuinely influenced me so much to think more
vice
critically
versa.
about things.
Yeah.
And I know that we have too. And that's the point of this show, though, guys. That's the point of this show. There isn't anyone who is politically beholden to anything on here.
It's all
she just
real.
got
It's
out.
all authentic.
She just got out of her party. Anna has been leftist her whole life, who is now calling them out on things. I'm Australian, okay? I'm not even really in this conversation. But I am, because I care, and I've been well researched.
It wouldn't be the same
and
without
that is the
you.
point of this show.
And Lindy,
is we talk about it.
Lindy, to your point, because I feel politically homeless myself, because I don't think either party really represents me or my values. But the way that I try to see things is America's my home. My belief in our political system, our constitution, that's my home. This place is my home. The Young Turks is my home. Any place where we are able to openly and authentically discuss and debate our views, that's the American home that I want to build on. You know
I
what
love
I'm
that, and
saying?
I love. She always says, she's like, "I'm American."
I
That's
love
what you
that
say. You're
too.
like,
I
"I'm
love
an
that.
American. I'm not
I
a
love
liberal.
that
I'm
so
not a
much.
conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an American."
Yes.
And I'm not an American, but I also care just as much about these issues that affect America, because you know what? America is the breeding ground for the rest of the Western world.
That's definitely
we follow in lockstep with what you'll do. So when you guys proclaim freedom, when we proclaim freedom, that we are not going to be beholden to propaganda, that we are not going to be beholden to narratives, and we're going to seek the truth and seek what is best for this country. And by the way, I've seen more of that in the last 2 weeks than ever in my last 10 years living in this country. This truly makes me believe that maybe this is the turning point. That despite the fact that people have been so gross and so terrible in some of the language that they have used when talking about Charlie Kirk and talking about our movement, what matters to me is the fact that we've all unified against that, and people who would have usually disagreed and hated each other and fought and debated on this show would in fact come together and say, hey, the divide, the line in the sand, it has never been clearer.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is what I hope this country can move forward with. Screw the partisanship.
All right.
Screw it.
We're out of time, ladies, but I wanted to give you all a chance to plug your work. Before I do, though, Will Witt, you've been a delight.
Thank you. I made it sound like I was almost like a leftist on the show today with everything
A
I
little
said.
bit, a little bit. No,
you know, I was
you're an
being-
American, okay?
Damn right.
All right, so Will, where can everyone find your work?
Everyone can find me at the Will Witt. Order my book, Do Not Comply. And if you're a student high school student, or looking to transfer, and you believe in free speech, free expression, check out New College of Florida. I'd love to have you.
Awesome. Lindy?
At Lindy Li on X and Connect and elsewhere. Thank you so much, guys.
You guys can catch my show Dangerous Conversations on YouTube. You can message me or FaceTime me on Connect, and I'm Amy Dangerfield on every other platform.
You can follow me on social media at Anna Kasparian, youtube.com/The Young Turks, and also on Connect. Love you guys. Have a great one, and we'll see you soon.